Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining the webinar today. So this morning, I'll be talking to you about the medicine preparation program here at Abbey College in Cambridge. My name is Sephora. My role here is the head of medicine applications. I'm also the head of biology as well. So I'd like to start by introducing the medicine preparation program here at ACC. And essentially what we have created here is we have designed an in-depth program which supports students in their preparations for making university applications to medicine courses. This is led by me. So what that means is that I deliver specially prepared lessons that target the needs of our students. I also help students with all aspects of securing work experience, both online and real life work experience, volunteer work, all of their applications to the medical schools. So that's the reference writing, personal statement, etc. So all aspects of the preparation application process is led by me. And so the students work very, very closely with me throughout their 2-year journey. We do have a very high success rate of students being offered places on medical courses here at Abbey College. So for example, for the upcoming September 2023 entry, all of the applicants have been offered at least one place at medical school. So some of our students have even been offered more than one place. So that's fantastic for the students. We had an extremely high success rate in September 2022 as well. So we had 22 medical school places offered to 14 students. So that's significantly higher than most other secondary schools. So how do we define a medic at Abbey College? It's a very, very specific definition. So a medic is defined as a student who wants to specifically apply to study to one of the following courses at university. So standard medicine, so becoming a doctor to treat human beings, a dentist, or a veterinary medicine applicant. So that is a doctor specifically to treat animals. The medicine preparation program is not for other healthcare professionals. So it's not for nurses, say, for example, or for those students that might want to apply to become a radiographer. Those students are supported alongside other sciences outside the medicine preparation program. And this is because the medicine preparation for medicine, dentistry and veterinary science is so much more complex and so distinct from applying to other healthcare courses. So on the assumption that students have joined us in September, ready to start A-level, the A-level subjects that they should choose are these: chemistry. All medical schools absolutely require this subject as a prerequisite. That's a non-negotiable. Most medical schools will also require biology as well as a non-negotiable prerequisite, although not all of them. And then the third subject will be a third science or a maths subject. So we strongly recommend that students choose maths as a third subject. We need to be clear that medical schools, all of them, dictate that students only need to study 3 subjects at A-level as a prerequisite, not 4. However, when students join Abbey College in September to start their Year 12 studies, they actually start on 4 subjects and they later drop 1. So for example, a lot of students might pick physics as a 4th subject, or they might pick psychology as a 4th subject, or they might choose something completely different. The purpose for that is to see how they can perform in their 3 main subjects in term 1. And if it turns out that actually biology chemistry, maths is not their strong suit, perhaps at the end of term one, they might actually reconsider their decision as to whether they want to be studying medicine, and then they would have another subject to fall back on. A common question that I get asked is, do I need 4 subjects to study medicine at either Cambridge or Oxford? Now, if you look at the prerequisites on the university websites, the answer to that is no. Both Cambridge and Oxford do stipulate that they require 3 subjects. In truth, having 4 subjects to apply to those universities does make their application more competitive. However, the student needs to ensure that they can actually get A and A star grades in those 4 subjects. But if by studying 4 subjects, they're unable to guarantee that they can get A grades and A star grades, we actually recommend that they don't apply to Oxford or Cambridge, and that they actually drop to 3 A-level subjects so that they can have a competitive application to other medical schools. Besides having the main subject prerequisites of biology, chemistry, and perhaps maths or physics, the other things that students must do to prepare is they have to sit the UCAT, so that's the University Clinical Aptitude Test. And this particular test is taken between July and September, so in the 3 months preceding the October deadline for making the medical school application, and it's only valid for 1 year. So if a student decides that they want to take a gap year and apply for medicine after they have left Abbey College, they would have to take the UCAT in the 3 months preceding making an application. So it's only valid for 1 year. After this year, so for September 2025 entry, the BMAT will no longer be required. So this is the last year that students will be taking the BMAT. So the BMAT is still required for September 2024 entry, but as this webinar is specifically for students that are going to be applying for 2025 entry, they don't have to take the BMAT. So it's just the UCAT for our incoming Year 12 students. The BMAT universities haven't currently stated what aptitude test they're going to use in place of the BMAT. So that's just something that I am looking out for. On top of taking the UCAT, the students must have also conducted clinical work shadowing in a medical setting. So that usually means in the UK, a hospital setting or a general practice, so a GP surgery, a dental surgery, a veterinary surgery. An alternative word for clinical shadowing is that it's sometimes called work experience. Students often ask me whether the home country clinical shadowing is valid. It absolutely is. Home country clinical shadowing is highly valued, so please do encourage students to attain home country clinical shadowing or work experience in their local medical settings. I often find with Abbey College students, they do find it slightly less challenging to be able to attain hospital or other medical setting work experience in their own home country than it is in the UK, because it is highly, highly competitive to attain clinical shadowing placement in the UK. The other thing that students should do to make their application competitive is having completed at least 6 months volunteer work. So a lot of our students will volunteer perhaps in a care home or in a hospice. Very often our students are not old enough to have volunteered in those kinds of settings. So a lot of Abbey College students will volunteer in local charity shops perhaps. There are also some volunteer placements available in our hospitals doing ward rounds, but however, they are really, really competitive places to get into, but it's something we do try and support our students to attain. So if a student is joining us in year 12, so that's year 1 of A-levels in September, they need to really be able to cope with the demands of the A-level course, which will enable them to have the ability to make a competitive medical school applications. So students really ideally should have a GCSE qualification. This is becoming increasingly vital. Universities often are not considering applicants that don't have GCSEs. And the GCSE grades need to be high quality grades. So they need to have achieved at least a level 8 or 9 in each of their subjects. I understand that in some countries, GCSEs are still graded on the letter scale. So the GCSE should either be 8s or 9s or grades A stars in several GCSE subjects. So we recommend in at least 6 or 7 GCSEs, particularly the maths or the sciences. Alternative is that if they don't have GCSEs, they need to have attained a home country equivalent qualification. And it really does need to be an official qualification. So for many countries, what this usually means is that the student will have actually completed their home country high school certificate, and then they join us to study year 12 after they have completed their home country high school certificate. And this is for several reasons, really. So first of all, if a student has only completed up to about year 10 or year 11 in their home country, that's not really an equivalent to GCSE, because when they come to study A-levels with us, they really, really struggle to meet the demands of the A-level course. The second thing is that universities, when students are making their applications to universities, they will be making their applications with A-level predicted grades rather than actual achieved grades if they intend to study medicine straight after A-level. So what the universities will need to see is a previously attained qualification, just to judge to see if the predicted grades are genuine. So unless a student has actually got some actual achieved qualifications behind them, it's going to make a less competitive application. Okay. So what if a student does not yet have the qualifications to start year 12? Can they join us at Abbey College? The answer is absolutely yes, they can. At ACC, we offer an excellent 2-year GCSE program. So that's what we would call year 10 and year 11 in the UK. Alternatively, if appropriate, a student could actually join us on our 1-year accelerated GCSE program. So that's essentially where they study 2 years of GCSE at an accelerated rate in 1 year. So the option which is best for an individual student will vary. So it will depend on the age of the student and to what year they have studied in their home country education system. So I must stress that GCSE qualifications are increasingly a necessity for students in order to make a competitive application. So here I have a pathway. This is also on the college website. So assuming a student wants to study at Abbey College from year 12, we call that year 1. So that's year 1 of A-levels. So all students will follow a common academic program. So that's essentially AS. So they'll study biology, chemistry, maths, and a 4th subject in September, dropping one, and studying 3 subjects from January. And then at the end of the year, a student really will need to have achieved at least 3 A grades at AS in order for them to be able to successfully progress onto year 2 of A-level studies. If a student achieves less than 3 A grades, then I wouldn't recommend that they progress to year 13 on the A-level program if they want to apply for medicine. So for that, we have an alternative. So it's the year 2, could be that they study our International Foundation program. So I must be clear at this point, our progression from year 12 into year 13 is 3 C grades for most students. However, for medicine, because they really do need to get A grades and A star grades in year 13, that's really going to be challenging for them to achieve unless they have achieved 3 A grades in year 12. So when I'm talking about students needing to achieve 3 A grades in year 12 in order for them to successfully be able to cope with year 2 of A-level at year 13, I'm specifically talking about medicine. I'm not talking about our other courses. So let's just stick with the year 12 into year 13 pathway for now. So if they want to do that, they can then apply to Route 1 options. So that is basically via the UCAS system, where they apply to 4 medical schools through UCAS. And then outside of UCAS, they can apply to even more medical schools, and that is specifically targeted to international students. They also have Ireland available to them if they're not an international student for UK purposes. So if they are a UK student, they could also apply to Irish universities or other courses around the world. So if a student is applying to study medicine via the A-level route, they can either apply via UCAS, and they can also apply via non-UCAS options as well. Alternatively, if they're studying on our International Foundation program, the best course for the students would be not to apply to universities but via UCAS, because actually those universities will not accept medicine, will not accept IFP as a prerequisite. So what we recommend for those students studying our IFP is that through UCAS, they apply for other non-medicine courses. So something like 5 biomedical science courses or 5 pharmacy courses. And then they make their applications to medical schools outside of UCAS. And that is an extremely successful pathway for Abbey College students. And so this really brings me on to the next bit: how are applications made to UK medical schools? So I've talked about UCAS already. UCAS stands for the UCAS Universities and Colleges Admissions Services. And it's a general university application portal, and the website is there. That's their logo. So via this portal, students will apply to 4 UK medical schools, and the 5th option, because students can apply to 5 courses via UCAS, the 5th option will not be a medicine course. They have to pick a different option, such as biomedical science, as a safety option. And that's not just for Abbey College students, that's for all students applying to medicine. They're only allowed to apply to 4 UK medical schools, and then they have to apply to a 5th option, which is a safety option. They're also not allowed to apply to both Cambridge and Oxford. So if they have ambitions for an Oxford University, they have to pick one. Applications via UCAS to medical courses specifically, these take place at the start of year 13, which is the 2nd year of A-level. And in 2023, the deadline for making medical school applications and Oxbridge applications is actually the 16th of October. And that's for September 2024 entry. That's actually different for most other years. So most other years, or it has historically been the 15th of October. But if you take a look online, the deadline this year has moved to the 16th of October. So via the UCAS portal, Abbey College will submit predicted grades for the students. So in order to make a competitive application via UCAS, really we should not be submitting predicted grades any lower than at least 3 A grades. So preferably we'll be submitting 3 A-star grades or a mixture of A and A-star grades to make the application as competitive as possible. But we will only do that if we have confidence that the students can achieve those grades. If we do not think that the students can achieve A and A-star grades, we will be having conversations with students about either applying to alternative courses to medicine or applying to medical courses outside of the UCAS portal, because their predicted grades required tend to be a little bit lower. The student will also write their personal statement, which they will submit via UCAS, and we will write our teacher reference. Students will also need to meet an English language requirements. So it depends on where in the world they are from. For some of our students,
Hi, Sephora. You've become muted.
Sorry, at what point? What was the last thing I said?
For some of our students, I think was the last part.
Oh, so for some of our students, they will be able to simply meet a GCSE grade requirements. But for most of our students who are international applicants and who are studying the courses in English as an additional language, they will actually need to meet the IELTS requirement. So that's the case for the majority of our students. So many medical schools will require an overall IELTS score of 7.5 with no lower than a level 7 in any of the 4 components. Some medical schools do have a slightly lower IELTS score of an overall score of 7. And some of those courses, which I mentioned earlier, where they're making the application outside of UCAS, so they're specifically targeting international students, they may have slightly lower IELTS requirements as well. So, and that will vary depending on those universities. So outside of UCAS and after the October deadline, international students will also have the opportunity to make direct applications to universities outside of UCAS. So what do we mean by a direct application? They actually make the application directly to individual universities. So international students also have the option to apply to some UK medical schools outside of UCAS, whereby students apply directly to individual medical schools. And the UK university options, and this is only for medicine, it's not for dentistry or veterinary sciences at the moment. The options available to the students are Brunel University, Buckingham School of Medicine, University of Central Lancashire, and the Queen Mary Malta branch. So this is basically the same as Queen Mary London, but it's the Malta campus. So for Brunel and Buckingham, unfortunately, they no longer accept foundation courses from any secondary school anymore. So they do require students to have studied A-level as a prerequisite. However, the grades that they require, the predicted grades require, are slightly lower than the UCAS universities. So they will require perhaps 2 A grades and a B grade, for example. But I always say to the students, the predicted grades will change from year to year, so they should always be looking at the requirements on the websites regularly. University of Central Lancashire, which is known as UCLan, that does accept our foundation program. Queen Mary Malta only accepts the A-level program. Brunel has now started asking for the UCATs. Buckingham School of Medicine doesn't ask for the UCAT, but they do have their own aptitude test, which is similar to the UCAT. UCLan doesn't currently ask for a UCAT, but Queen Mary Malta does. There are also other options outside of the UK. So there's St. George's University, Grenada. They accept both A-level and they also accept the foundation program. That's a really nice backup students. They really understand the requirements of international students. They understand that our students are learning A-levels in English as an additional language, which is why their predicted grades are a bit lower. So they require a minimum of 3 B grades. But again, they only offer the medicine course. They don't offer a veterinary science or a dentistry course. University of Antigua, similar to St. George's University, Grenada in terms of their requirements. Both the St. George's University, Grenada and University of Antigua, they operate on an American system. So students will have the option to complete their clinical rotations in either UK hospitals or US hospitals. Another popular option for our students is Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, also known as RCSI. Again, it's only the medicine course that is available, but they do accept applicants who have studied A-level or IFP. Again, their predicted grades via the A-level is a little bit lower than the UCAS universities, but that will vary from year to year. A really nice option where 2 of our foundation students have attended is the Nicosia Medical School in Cyprus, and quite exciting news is they now offer medicine and veterinary sciences, but they don't yet have a dentistry option available yet. And another thing that has opened up to Abbey College students is the IUMC. So it's the Irish Universities and Medical School Consortium. So this is basically a portal through which students could apply to up to 4 Irish medical or dental schools. But the 4 options are not available to all students. So it will depend on where in the world their native home country is. So if students are interested in that, I always ask them to make an appointment with the representative from IUMC so that they can discuss their specific visa requirements with them. We're not allowed to discuss visa requirements with the students, so they must make the appointment directly with the IUMC. There is also an alternative option for applying to the Irish medical schools. So if a student is from the EU or the EEA area, or they're a UK resident, they can actually apply to the Central Applications Office in Ireland, which is like their version of the UCAS system. And so they can apply to 5 universities through that option. However, students from the EU and from the UK will need to sit the HPAT. The HPAT is like the UCAT, so it's the aptitude test that the Irish universities use. However, students who are from outside the UK or from outside the EU or EEA area, they do not have to study the HPAT in order to be able to apply to those universities. So it is different requirements for different applicants depending on where their native home country is. So Back to Abbey College now. So how are students supported to attain clinical shadowing? So we help them with the application process for making applications to local hospitals. And the application forms are downloaded from the local hospital websites. We direct students to do this immediately when they arrive in September, but please discourage students from doing this before joining Abbey College, because we need to guide them on how to complete the application forms properly. Applying to hospitals in the UK is becoming increasingly like completing a university application. So we need to make sure that the students are writing answers that are competitive and is going to put them in the best light possible before making the applications to the hospital, because the hospitals receive thousands of applications for clinical shadowing. So our most local hospital, which is only about a couple of miles up the road from Abbey College, is Addenbrooke's. And that's the link there if students want to have a look at what an application form looks like. But as I say, they really mustn't complete the application form before arriving to Abbey College, partly because we want to help them make their application form look competitive. But also, secondly, the hospitals are only in a position to only offer places to students that live locally. So before students arrive to Abbey College, they're technically not living locally. So that may actually prevent them from securing a placement unless they can actually write down the Abbey College address. A little bit further away is West Suffolk Hospital. It's a short train ride away. So we support students in how to make that train journey. But again, that's something that they will do on their own. Some students may also be able to apply to Northwest Anglia Hospital. Generally, this is more for students who are either from the UK and actually live near the Northwest Anglia Hospital, or perhaps an Abbey College student that might be living closer to that in exceptional circumstances. The other thing that students could be doing, in addition to applying for hospital clinical shadowing placements, they should also be applying to general practice surgeries, dental surgeries, veterinary practice surgeries as well. And we provide students with contact details of the surgery in the local Cambridgeshire area and the surrounding counties. So areas that students can easily make the train journey to attend, or perhaps a taxi journey. However, as I've said already, universities do recognise that attaining clinical shadowing can be very, very challenging, and becoming increasingly so, especially in the post-COVID era, where our hospitals have a lot of pressures. So what the universities will also value is that students have learned about the medical profession in other ways. So students are expected to learn about the medical profession perhaps by completing an online course. And there's a link here to the Aspiring Medics online work experience programs. So when students click on this website, students will be able to complete the online Observe GP course, the Brighton Sussex Medical School online work experience. I will be ensuring that the students complete these in term 1. There's other courses as well that they could do on FutureLearn. The Discover Dentistry is an excellent one, and the Vet School Application Support one is excellent for vets as well. We also invest in our students. So we purchase the Invest in Online Young Doctor, Young Dentist and Young Vets weekend programs in term 1 of year 12. So these are online one-day seminars that students will attend. They roughly occur around November time. So there's lots and lots of different ways that students can learn about the medical profession, so that they've got something to talk about when they attend medical school interviews and when they complete their application forms. We also encourage students to start applying for volunteer work as soon as they arrive. Any volunteer work they can do in their home countries is strongly encouraged. As we say to students, the more you do, the better. More is more in a medicine application. So some examples of excellent quality volunteer work ideally would be that they can work in a care home. So a care home is defined in the UK as a place where elderly citizens will live in their retirement. Often they're places where the elderly cannot care for themselves, so they have to be cared for by the professionals in the care home, so our students can perform some volunteer work there. They're also known as nursing homes as well. However, there can be an age limit for these. So very often, unless the student is 17 or 18, as a minimum, they won't be able to apply for volunteer work there. So because many of our Abbey College students are 16 when they join us in year 12, they start off by applying in charity shops. Here's an example of where students can apply for veterinary science specific volunteer work. If they want to become dentists, really the most appropriate volunteer work would be like the doctors, so volunteering in a care home or a nursing home or a charity shop. Essentially, the purpose of the volunteer work is designed to show that students are able to communicate with members of the public, that they have a caring side, they can work with vulnerable people in an empathetic way, they can work as part of a team, they can take direction. All of those skills is what the volunteer work is designed to help the students build. If students are interested as to where they can begin their research, they can start looking around these hospice websites. These are examples of places where many Abbey College students secure volunteer work through. So very often it'd be things like charity shops that are designed to sell goods for the Arthur Rank Hospice or the Each Hospice. The Arthur Rank Hospice might also have volunteer work for working in the bistro of the hospice itself. So students will come into contact with the patients and their families, as an example. And for some of these, they might also be able to work as ward volunteers as well, so directly with the patients in the hospital side of the hospices themselves. Our students, some of our students are 16 years old or younger. They won't be able to volunteer in a work setting if they're under the age of 16. So if they're keen to get some volunteer work program behind them, I would strongly encourage them to sign up to the medical course volunteering reflection program for a small fee. Last time I looked, it was about £50. They could go through the volunteer program, and then when they hit 16 or 17, they can actually secure some real life work experience, volunteer work. How do we support students through the UCATs? We have dedicated lessons each week for students to rehearse UCAT questions. We also invest in some professional external UCAT training for each student via the Medic portal. And here is the link in case any of your students want to get an understanding of what that entails. So this comprehensive program that we purchase for the students includes a one-day live course, which is delivered by a UCAT expert. So the last couple of years, they have sent maybe a 4th or a 5th year medical student from Cambridge, so a proper expert who has studied the UCAT themselves and attained an extremely high grade. That's why they're studying medicine, so they understand how to perform well in the UCAT. But on top of that, they are also provided with 5 private tuition sessions with a private tutor. So students will not have to pay for that. We pay for that. And all students need to do is set up the sessions themselves. They're also provided with an online question bank for students to complete private revision for their UCAT. And there is also an online course as well that they can attend. So it's very, very comprehensive, the UCAT training. What we would say to our students, because they are studying in English as an additional language, to help them get that competitive edge with the UCAT, because the UCAT is a very, very difficult exam to sit, is that they actually study the UCAT from about January. So they may see online advice that, you know, students should be revising the UCAT during the summer holidays, but I find that that will not be enough time for Abbey College students. So that's why we actually start supporting them 6 months earlier than the recommended time, just to give them that competitive edge. We also recommend that students complete some reading, lots and lots of external reading, so that they can learn about the medical profession, and they can also be able to understand the challenges of the profession. And they will also have something else to be able to write about in their personal statement. So what does the Abbey College 2-year medicine preparation program journey look like? So they start with us in year 12. So that's year 1, term 1. So that's September to December. The students will need to make themselves known to me immediately that they want to apply for either medicine, dentistry, or veterinary science. And I sit down with the student and I begin to make a personalized plan about their route to studying medicine. I have a very, very honest conversation with the students. I look at their GCSE results or their home country equivalents, just so we can see whether medicine is the best route for them, and also which direction is likely to be the best route to studying medicine. They will be asked to join the Medic Club, so that's 50 minutes per week. And in Medic Club, we immediately start making applications for clinical shadowing, but I also start asking them to complete the online experiences. So that's the Observe GP, the BSMS courses that I was telling you about earlier. And where I also encourage them to start securing volunteer work as well. At the end of term 1, I will analyse the student performance to determine their suitability for applying to medical school. And honestly, not all students will be suitable. If they have underperformed significantly in their term 1 exams, we actually do not include them in the medicine preparation program in January, because those students really need to be supported in other ways in ensuring that they can actually pass their A-levels and increasing their results. However, if they have scored good grades in their term 1 exams, then we can add the medicine preparation program to their timetable for terms 2 and 3. So terms 2 and 3 is January to June. And so students will study 3 subjects from January. So that's the vice principal's rule. But in place of the 4th subject, which they would have just dropped, they pick up medicine as a 4th subject. So it's a very, very intensive program that we offer here at Abbey College. So this will be 6 lessons per week. And during this program, students will learn about our National Health Service. They will engage in scientific research projects. So I'll teach them how to write a scientific report style essay, where they will have to read about science to above an A-level standard. I will ask them to do a book review to ensure that they've at least read even just 1 book that they can talk about. We also do disease presentations where we get them to rehearse their presentation skills, getting them comfortable speaking in front of an audience. I teach them about their various university course options. I encourage them to read articles in scientific journals to help support those projects. I teach them about scientific topics that aren't necessarily taught on the A-level program because they have been removed from the A-level program, such as anatomy, antibiotic resistance, biochemistry, pandemics, any of those types of topics that aren't included in A-level courses. We also learn how to answer interview questions, university interview questions. We will soon be starting personal statement writing. And throughout this whole time, I will continually be analysing student performance to determine their suitability for applying to medical school. So I'll be in communication with parents. I'll be letting parents and students know if I think that their grades are slipping. But also, as a result of looking at their performance throughout terms 1, 2, and 3, we will finalise in term 3 the most suitable personalised route for application to medical school. So for some people, that will mean that they will be absolutely fine to progress from year 12 into year 13 because they're going to get A and A star predicted grades. For other students, that would not be a good idea. It would be better for them to go to the IFP. For some students, it may even be that they do not apply to medicine straight after completing year 13 or IFP. For some students, it might be better for them to go and study a biomedical science degree course or pharmacy at university, and then they apply to medical school as a graduate. So there is not a one size fits all in the route to medicine. Students need to understand that there are various routes to becoming a doctor, a dentist, or a vet, and that doesn't necessarily always mean applying to medical school straight after completing secondary school. All right. Now, in the case where a student is either going to progress to year 13, year 2, or the IFP, and they're going to apply to medicine straight after that, in term 1, students will need to take the UCAT. They need to ensure that they do that by the end of September. Last year, the deadline for that was September 29th, so a couple of weeks before their UCAS application deadline. Some students like to get it out the way. Some students actually like to take their UCAT exam during July or August during the summer holidays, but many students like to give themselves more studying time, so they take the UCAT exam in September, which I think is perfectly sensible. I also then run a slightly different medic club for year 13 students, so different to the year 12 medic club, because the year 12 medic club is where they do the online work experience and apply for real life work experience. The year 13 medic club is a separate club which has a very, very different function where we purely practice university interview questions. Also in term 1 of year 13, students will need to have finished their UCAS application by October 16th in 2023. Also, after October 16th, we start applying to those non-UCAS universities. So throughout November and December, we like to get some applications out the way. So often we make those Brunel applications, the UCLan applications, Buckingham, Queen Mary Malta, RCSI. We try and get as many of those applications done as possible before the end of term 1, but we also do that at the start of term 2 as well, because the non-UCAS universities have a wide range of deadlines. There may be a possibility of mock interviews for early interviews, but that's quite unlikely. Most students will be invited to university interviews in term 2 and term 3. So in terms 2 and 3, we continue to making those non-UCAS direct entry medicine applications. It's really in term 2 where they have mock interviews with myself and another teacher who supports the medicine preparation program. They will have one-to-one interviews with us. And that is pretty much the 2-year journey. If you want to have more information, you can find more information at this link on our website. It will take you to this page, and then you click on the medicine preparation program button there. So the other thing to note is that sometimes universities like to come in and deliver talks to our students. Sometimes those talks may be online. So we have direct links with universities as well. Often the American University of Antigua likes to provide a talk. So does St. George's University, Grenada. And specifically those universities like to present to our students because their offering is quite different. It is the American style system of medical schools. So the students do need to have quite specific information delivered to them. So what can students do before joining the Abbey College to start their medicine application preparation journey? I strongly encourage students of any age to learn as much about the medical profession as possible. So read books, read scientific articles, read medical journals. They really do need to ensure that they are clear and up to date on any science in the news, medicine updates in the news. They also should, if possible, if it is allowed for their age and in their home country, to try and attain clinical shadowing in a medical setting in their home country. So very often our students will have been able to attain clinical shadowing in local hospitals in their home country. Some of our students say that they don't have GP surgeries in their home country. That's perfectly fine. Whatever medical setting is appropriate to their country is fine. What we need is for students to be able to observe doctors working with patients. So we need students to observe those communication skills, the doctor's ability to empathize with patients, the ability for doctors to be very knowledgeable. All of those skills they need to be aware. They also need to be aware of the challenges of the profession. Do online courses. Maybe they could go on YouTube, they could do a TED talk. They could try and do some volunteer work in their home country if that's allowed for their age. There are thousands and thousands of YouTube clips that they could watch about the NHS, about university interview questions, about interesting scientific developments. Really, we just want our students to be as knowledgeable and show that they are interested in the profession. Also, they could go on the Medic portal, and there is an amazing tool on there called the comparison tool. And what this allows students to do is to compare the different medical schools that they are interested in, and they can compare them for prerequisites, subjects that they require, the predicted grades that they require, how many places there are available for international students. What they will realize is that each university only has very, very, very few places available to international students. So some universities only have maybe 8 places specifically dedicated to international students out of a possible 300 places. Other universities may have 20 or 25 places. So this is why it's really, really important to have the discussion with the students that even if they are predicted A and A star grades, that's really not going to be a guaranteed place at university. And that's why we do strongly encourage our students to make the applications outside of UCAS to those direct application universities, because that is really where our students experience significant success in attaining a medical school place. And I think they should also self-reflect as well. A really, really important question is that they ask themselves, is applying to study medicine really right for me? They really have to be applying for medicine for the right reasons. They have to really want to be working with people. They really have to be interested in disease. They really have to not be bothered by really shocking injuries or really upset by shocking diseases. They really have to have that level of resilience and scientific knowledge and that desire to work and empathize with people. And so sometimes students will come through the medicine preparation program. They spend 1.5 years with me, and then they say to me, Sephora, do you know what? To be honest with you, I've learned so much about medicine now that I realize that it's not right for me. I'm going to apply for a pharmacology course at university or a science course or some other course at university. And that's perfectly okay as well, because that's really what the medicine preparation journey should do for students. It's open up their eyes to the reality of the profession. And if in the end they decide that it's not right for them, then we can guide them to alternative courses. But in the end, if they do come through the program and they decide that they have got the necessary predicted grades and it continues to be a profession that they think they're going to love working in, then of course we will support them through the application process. Okay, so over to you now. So John, do we have some questions from our participants?
Hello, Sephora. I'm just coming back in. Hello there. Thank you for that deep dive into medicine preparation. It was very thorough, and we do have a couple of questions, but please, if anyone has any more questions, please do post them now. We have a few minutes where we can go through them, and even if we can't tackle them in real time, we will get back to you. One of the first questions that came through was just about the pre-degree diploma and how that sits alongside the medicine prep, whether that the medicine prep kind of overtakes the PDD or whether it runs alongside. So I don't know if you can go into a bit more detail on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So this year, we haven't run a PDD for the medics because we haven't needed to. We've actually, rather than giving them 1 lesson a week, we've given them 6 lessons per week, plus a club on top of that. So they've actually had 7 hours of medicine prep. So the PDD has been for other courses this year.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sephora. And we had another question just asking about the English level. And I know obviously for medicine, there's a specific requirement for the universities. Yeah. About the kind of IELTS level. I mean, we've had a request here about English C1 certificate valid for UK universities. I think they have to take an IELTS test as part of the application, but if you can just confirm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, IELTS is what they require.
And what are the kind of IELTS grade boundaries that most I know it's kind of, there's lots of different universities, lots of different but what sort of target should they be aiming for to kind of secure that place?
As a minimum, overall 7.5 with no lower than 7 in any of the categories. That's certainly the case for the UCAS universities. For the direct entry universities, UCLan is an overall of 7 with no lower than 7 in any categories. But for some of the others like RCSI and Nicosia Medical School, they can go as low as 6.5 in the writing component, but they wouldn't go any lower than that. So really it's a minimum of 7, overall 7.5 that the student should be aiming for. And very often our top quality medics, the ones that are achieving, those A and A star grades in their A levels, they tend to be the ones that are the strongest in English. They tend to be the students that have overall 8.5 or 9 in IELTS, because that's the other thing to consider. The IELTS is not just about meeting the minimum requirement to cope with a medical course. It's having a high IELTS score also enables them to access their A-level courses more deeply and increases their chances of securing A and A star grades. Certainly that's the case for a language-based subject like biology. We find that the students that do attain A and A star grades, they're the students that are attaining at least a minimum of 7.5 or 8 or even 9 in IELTS. Students that attain less than that tend not to be able to access the A and A star grades.
Thanks, Sephora. And just one thing, obviously, in terms of making an application to study with us, we do not require an IELTS requirement. We talk about IELTS because the universities are obviously going to require that test. But for us, you don't have to have the IELTS. It's just to go onto the university.
Not the IELTS of 7.5. No, it's just the minimum requirement, IELTS requirement to enable them to get a visa as for any A-level course. So it doesn't matter. There's no specific one for medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. We just use that language because it's well understood. We had a question about, do we have a maximum number of students that can take part in the medicine preparation program in any given year? I know we've had different numbers.
We don't. Thankfully, each year we've been able to support the numbers that have wanted to join the medicine preparation program. So generally, in most years, this will be somewhere between 15 and 20 students. But
Right.
we haven't applied a maximum.
Perfect. Any more questions, please just post for in the next couple of minutes. We did have a question earlier about IB and applying to medicine, and kind of I responded that students can take IB and apply to medical schools. We just don't offer the IB program here, we offer A levels. But I suppose all that kind of preparation work that you talked about still applies to IB students. They have to, do their work experience, they have to prepare for the UCAT. So when you are choosing courses, do ask those questions, and colleges ask those questions about the preparation they do, because the IB you can cover biology, chemistry, maths, but it's that extra work that you need to do. Do they help support you with that?
Absolutely. The universities will require all students to take an aptitude test because it's a leveler. The UCAT is probably one of the best ways for universities to judge whether a student will be able to meet the demands of a medical school course, because we can predict 3 A stars, but really the university has no way of actually judging really if the student is going to be able to attain those 3 A stars. But the UCAT is an absolute definite score that has been achieved, and it allows students to be compared against other applicants. So yeah, they absolutely have to score as highly as possible on the UCAT. They have to learn about the medical profession through volunteer work and work experience. Because if they don't have that deep knowledge of the profession, that will come through in their university interviews, and unfortunately they won't be offered a place on medical courses.
Brilliant, thank you, Sephora. I don't think, unless we have any questions come through in the next moment or so. There we go. We have one more question just come through as I've said that. So one question just about students finishing high school in their home country. Is the route still, and you talked about this earlier, I think, but just to reaffirm, is the route still available that they can go through A levels, or would they be going more towards a foundation route?
Either. Our best achieving students. So for example, I'm going to use Iran as an example, but it's not limited to Iran. We have a number of Iranian students who will finish their Iranian high school certificates. They finish year 12. Sometimes they actually join us to the 2-year A-level program. And those students choose to do that because they realize that is their best chance of actually scoring those A and A star grades. Sometimes a student might be a bit older, so they might be 19 or 20 years old, and they apply to our foundation course. And again, that's absolutely fine. So that will be up to the individual preference and age of the students.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, if you are making an application, do let us know what you're doing at school, what you're expecting to come out of it, and we can make that plan with you as well. And as Sephora said earlier, we do have the alternative as well, that students, depending on age, depending on their circumstances, they can look at the GCSE program as well as that preparation. So we have multiple options for students, in different stages of their academic journey. So do speak to us, let us know, and we can counsel on that as well as part of the application program. Excellent. I think we've got one partial question just about application, but can students apply if there is any GCSE equivalent? Again, I think that goes back to what you were saying, Sephora. We need to look at the kind of learning that's happened in your home country. We can very quickly make a decision as to whether it's equivalent to GCSE, and then kind of plot that trajectory into medicine and give you a good idea about how successful you might be, all things being equal.
It needs to be an official qualification rather than they've just gotten to year 10, but it doesn't produce a qualification. And for the two reasons that I've said, because it gives the universities an actual official qualification that the student has met. So there's some evidence there that the student is high aptitude. But second of all, the student really struggles to cope with the demands of an A-level course if they've joined us from, say, year 10 in their home country. They tend not to have the required background knowledge.
Excellent. Thank you, Sephora. I think that's it. I think we're going to call it a day. If you do have any questions that pop into your head, we will be in touch afterwards with a copy of the recording. So do feel free to ask us and we can put you in touch with Sephora to get those answers. But I think I'll just let you say goodbye and say thank you very much, everyone, for attending.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Goodbye.